Hello and welcome to Laura Banks' Fine Artist YouTube channel. Today I'm excited to be back again in Dolyestown, Pennsylvania, this time to visit the Tileworks of Bucks County. This historic building was once known as the Moravian Pottery Tile Works back when it was created and run by Henry Mercer. If you're familiar with my YouTube channel, you may have seen two other YouTube videos that I made that are related to Henry Mercer. The first video featured Fonthill Castle, which was a concrete building that Mercer had made for his home. The second video was about the Mercer Museum, which was another concrete building created by Mercer, but it was used to house his collection of pre-industrialized tools and artifacts. So these three buildings, Fonthill Castle, the Tileworks, and the Mercer Museum, are all part of Dolyestown's historical attraction known as the Mercer Mile. If you're new to my channel, please check out my website at laurabanksfineart.com. There you can see my artwork, you can see any news and updates. You can also check out other videos and blog posts that I put up. If you enjoy these videos, please like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, anything that helps my small channel grow. I really appreciate it. So Henry Mercer, born 1856 and died 1930, can be described as an archaeologist, an anthropologist, a tile maker, a collector, a scholar, and he was a big supporter of the American arts and craft movement. And he valued handmade objects over machine-made ones. And I go into his history a little bit more in some of my other videos about him. Henry Mercer built the Moravian Pottery Tile Works between 1911 and 1912. This was a working tile factory and specialized in handmade ceramic tiles and mosaics. Henry Mercer was so successful that his tiles were sought out by leading architects of the time to decorate public and private buildings all across the country. Some notable buildings that people might have heard of that have some of these tiles include the Harrisburg Capitol Building in Pennsylvania, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Massachusetts, and Grauman's Chinese Theater in California. These are just a few of the many buildings. After discovering Henry Mercer and his Moravian tiles, I start seeing them all over the place. You can see them in residential buildings. They have a very distinct style. So if you do a little research into them, you can start seeing those tiles everywhere. After Henry Mercer passed away in 1930, the Tile Works continued to operate, but under various leadership. Eventually, the Tile Works was purchased by Bucks County and was reopened as a working history museum. When you visit the Tile Works, you have a few options to choose from. You can tour the building at your own pace. The cost as of this video is about $15 for an adult, $8 for kids age 8 to 13, and then it's free for members to tour. According to their website, on Tuesdays, you have the option of booking what they call a tour with clay experience. Here you get to tour the Tile Works, and I'm not sure if it is a guided tour or again another kind of self-tour, but in addition to the tour, you also get to make your own 3-inch by 3-inch tile. They will then glaze and fire the tile for you that you can pick up in 4 weeks, and this experience costs about $75 per person. For my current trip to the Tile Works, I opted for the standard self-guided tour. For the first stop of this tour, you are ushered into this very large room. It kind of reminded me of a great hall. And in this room, you see there's a few rows of chairs and then a big screen, and you watch a 20-minute informational video about the history of Henry Mercer and the Moravian Pottery and Tile Works. After the video, you can walk around and explore the room. Just like many of Mercer's other buildings, there are tiles and artifacts everywhere. There's a ton to look at. I was drawn to this very large fireplace. You could pretty much step right inside of it, and it was surrounded by these brocade tiles. A lot of Mercer's tiles would tell a story, and you can see this around this fireplace as well as some of the other tiles found in his home and the Mercer Museum. So at your own pace, and after you have looked at everything you want to in this room, you then head up a flight of stairs. It's kind of neat because throughout this tour, there are these little plaques that are created out of tiles, and they kind of tell you or point you in the right direction of where you're supposed to go next. So right at the base of the stairs, they say tour goes this way, and you go up the steps. From here, you find yourself on a balcony. You're overlooking the big room you were just in. There are also some other displays of tiles in this walkway. So you can venture down the whole length of the balcony. While you're up here, it's really fun to look down on the large room that you were just in. It gives you this great bird's eye view of everything. And again, just another perspective. And you can a lot of times see things that you missed when you were down there. My favorite feature in this area was this wall made of tiles, and I think they were Mercer's tulip tiles, but just the different colors and how they all look together, I just thought they were really beautiful. Then you enter an upstairs room, and in this room there are a lot of display cases, and they show some of the older tiles that were created at the Tile Works. There are also a few plaques around that give you some information about some of the things you're looking at and the history of the museum. They also have some old photos of the Tile Works, and I love looking at these because you can see what the area looked like, what the building looked like way back when. There's a fireplace, a lot smaller than the other room, but it has these beautiful bright brocade mosaics around it. And after you are done looking around in this room, then you can exit to this long hallway. And in the long hallway, you see a number of these very large brick kilns. This is where Mercer would fire his tiles. I believe at the time they were coal fire kilns, but I am not 100% sure. And these kilns were in use until 1985. This is one of the criticisms that I have about this museum, is that they really don't give you enough information. You're on a self-guided tour, so you don't have the benefit of a guide. And unfortunately, there are not a lot of plaques around telling you information. For example, by these kilns, nothing was there to tell you anything about them. Now, maybe this would be totally different on a guided tour, but I think the majority of people do a self-guided tour when they visit this museum. Anyway, if you continue down this hallway, you have the option of going out the door to the balcony. The balcony overlooks this inner courtyard and gives you a really unique perspective of the Tile Works. It was fun to walk all the way around and peek in the windows. There are some buildings that you never see on the tour, so it's fun to imagine kind of what's up there and what they used it for. So after you're done on the balcony, you enter back into that long hallway with the kilns, and then you enter another room. This is another room that has some displays of different tools that they used. One thing that I've always been fascinated with are these giant plaster molds for these really big tiles. And I always wonder what those tiles would look like and how much clay it would take to fill them and how you would get them out of the mold. They are just really, really large. They're fun to see. This is just another example of another room that has a lot of interesting stuff in it, but just not a lot of information to tell you what it is. Then you head downstairs to what I think of as the real heartbeat of the factory. There are a few rooms and different places to explore down here, but here's where you encounter the staff and their apprentices, hard at work, pressing tiles, cutting out mosaics, glazing tiles, you name it, they're doing it. Now just next to the steps, you see this clay mixing area, and it looks like somebody's garage. There's a lot of machines and bags of things. You also see this 1903 pug mill that they use for mixing the clay. The clay that they use at the Tile Works is delivered from a local lake called Lake Towey. Out back you can see a mound of clay, which in the warmer months they will bring in some of that clay, load it into the pug mill, and then there is a grate on the front of the pug mill that helps to remove any organic material from the clay. If you're lucky and arrive on one of the days where they're making clay, you might be able to see this process in action. You can watch them load the pug mill and then cut the clay into squares and then bag it for storage. They were not making clay the day that I came, unfortunately, so I don't get to show you that process. Once the clay is processed in the pug mill and bagged, the staff then stores it below in a clay pit. They will load all the bags onto a dumbwaiter, and that will lower it into the pit. You can view the clay pit by going down another flight of stairs. It is actually located behind the stairs you just came down to get into this area. It is definitely much cooler down here, and you can kind of feel the change in temperature when you enter the room. There's also an earthy smell in the air as well. When they're done processing all the clay for the winter months, there are thousands of pounds of clay that are sitting down here. There's one interesting feature that you can see down in the clay pit. There are some tiles that are embedded into the ceiling, and the tiles read, "Keep me damp by the light of the lamp." They were not 100% sure about what Henry Mercer meant by these words, but they know the clay had to be kept damp, and the workers would use lamps to light their way in the clay pit, so they thought they were referencing that. When you head back upstairs, there's a lot of other things that you can see. Now, the staff here is working on real orders for either their gift shop or for customers, and so what you see them making is dependent on what orders they have for the day. You might see somebody pressing tiles, you might see somebody cutting out mosaics. It's all really dependent. In my experience, all the workers down here were super friendly. They love to talk about what they were doing and answer any questions that you have. There was this really nice staff member who was pressing brocade tiles at the time. She was really wonderful, and she walked me through what she was doing. She showed me how she used the press to press the tiles. She talked about the whole process. She answered any of my questions. It was really great to kind of see everything in action. If you go to my website and my blog where I talk about my experience at the Tileworks, I go into a little more detail about the process of how they make the tiles and make the mosaics. It just gives you a little bit more information than what I'm covering on my video. Another thing to note, that by the pug mill, you can walk outside and you can see the mound of clay. There's also this cute little garden that they have out there, which is fun to walk around in. And if you need to use a bathroom, there is a separate bathroom building that you can see from the open door and use if you need to. So after you have explored everything down in this area that you want to, you head out a door down another long hallway. In this hallway, you will see a hand painting area. And this is where they will hand glaze any tiles that they don't dip. So some tiles that get glazed are dipped and wiped, or they're just dipped, and then other tiles are hand painted with the glaze. Unfortunately for me, there was just a little display there. Nobody was working at the time. And if you continue down this hallway, you'll see more kilns and some other objects. And then there is a exit door all the way at the back. When you exit through this door, you are back in that first main room that you were in at the beginning of the tour. On your way out, don't forget to check out the gift shop. Here you can see the fruits of their labor, all these amazing tiles. They make great gifts. I always tend to end up buying something when I'm here. On this particular trip, I ended up buying 2 tiles for myself. One of the tiles was very similar to my absolute favorite tile of Henry Mercer's, and you can find this tile in Fonthill Castle. If you watch my video, you can see what tile I'm talking about, but the one is similar. It's not an 100% match. And then the other tile that I chose, I loved the little citrus tree or whatever type of fruit tree it has on it. And I do just like to say that all of these tiles are handmade. They're made with care and with skill. They are not mass produced on machines, so there may be small imperfections in some of them, But for me, that's what gives them their charm, to be honest. So the Tileworks is actually a really special place for me, and I want to talk about an experience that I had here about 20 years ago. I owe one of my absolute favorite summers to Henry Mercer and the Tileworks. In the summer of 2005, I actually worked as an apprentice here at the Tileworks. Now, this was back in the days when I mainly worked in clay, and I thought I would end up being a sculptor. But if you ever look at my bio on my website, you realize that I went to the Pennsylvania Academy, and I decided that I loved to draw and paint, even a little bit more than I liked playing around in clay. Now, I did this apprenticeship here 20 years ago, so some of the details are a little hazy for me, but this is what I remember. The apprenticeship program was basically a 12-week program that was offered 2 times a year for up to 3 people. You had to apply to be an apprentice. You had to show them a body of your ceramic works, and you had to be accepted. I remember deciding to fill out the application at the last moment and being so frazzled and turning it in and being like, there's no way I'm going to get this. And I was so thrilled when I actually was accepted for the program. As an apprentice, you would be taught traditional tile making techniques like pressing tiles and glazing tiles and cutting out mosaics and setting mosaics, things just like that. In exchange for all this experience, you would work about 24 hours a week and you would get an hourly wage for your work. One of the best parts about this apprenticeship was that you were provided with a small studio space upstairs where you could work on your own art. If I remember correctly, you had almost 24 hours access to the building. I think there was a small period of time where you couldn't get in, but other than that, you could work there before or after your shift or on a day off. I could not find any information about the apprenticeship program on their website. I did get the impression that there were apprentices still working there, but there is no information that I could find about it, unfortunately. In addition to providing more information for the guests on the tour, I think another thing that this museum could improve upon would be their website. There's not a lot of information on their website. It's kind of clunky, and I think it looked this way about 20 years ago. So this could be a good area for improvement. Even though the information is a little hazy for me because it's been so long since I've done this apprenticeship, I do remember how positive the overall experience was. I remember there were 2 other apprentices with me, and we were lucky because we were working in the summer. We would work in the daytime with the other staff, and the apprentices would stagger their schedules, so I worked mainly with the permanent staff. Just like today, as people would tour the museum, they would come through, I would tell them what I was working on and answer any of their questions that they might have. On my off time, I would be upstairs in my studio space, and one of the great things was that I had unlimited clay. I could use as much of it as I wanted to, which was great. And whatever I made, the staff would fire for me. And I remember there was one staff member, he was an expert in the firing process. One thing that I didn't talk about on this video, but I talk about on my blog a little bit, is that sometimes they didn't glaze the tiles. They would basically smoke them. And what I mean by that is in the saggers that they would put the tiles in, or these big containers, they would fill with sawdust or coal, and as it was fired, it would create this smoky effect. So one of the staff members who did a lot of the firings, he was really good at getting a variety of effects. So it ranged from very dark to very light, wispy, kind of smoking effect on the surface of the tile. And he was really good at achieving what you wanted to get. So I was always impressed with that. I was always drawn to Mercer's mosaics. So basically for the apprenticeship, that is mainly what I made. I made some tiles, but really I made a lot of mosaics. And Mercer's butterfly mosaic was my absolute favorite. And I ended up making all of these butterfly garden stepping stones that were kind of a homage to his butterfly mosaic. At the Tileworks, when they would make a mosaic, it would then be set in concrete and grouted with concrete. And this is terrible, but I have a box full of mosaics that I never grouted, and I should probably get on that because now I have a garden that I can put them in, but maybe that would be a fun project for me to actually go back 20 years and finish what I had started. This is a typical artist for you. So one of the downsides was that the glazes used by Henry Mercer, as well as the glazes today, contain lead. And when lead is in dust form, it can be toxic when you ingest it or inhale it. When it's in the tile form, it's not going to hurt you. What I remember from my apprenticeship was that once a week we had to hose down the floors and surfaces of the tile works in order to cut down on the dust. And when I say hose it down, I mean we literally took a hose and hosed down all the floors and the surfaces, and you had to wear rain boots so that your shoes wouldn't get wet. And I think the staff had to periodically be tested for lead poisoning too. So I think that was one of the drawbacks. I know they were trying to be really authentic. However, when it came to the firing process, they no longer used the brick kilns. Now they would use gas or electric kilns, which is not authentic. So it's kind of like they pick and choose what they think is authentic. And I don't know, I wasn't a big fan of exposing your staff to lead, especially since there are probably other glazes they could use that could give the same effect. My most embarrassing memory from the Tileworks was when we were making clay one day. We had to fill these wheelbarrows with clay, and we would dig it out of the mound of clay that's out back, wheel it in, and then shovel it into the pug mill. And I remember the wheelbarrows were pretty heavy, and I think this one was just too heavy for me, and it just started leaning and I couldn't stop it, and it spilled clay, which is like the consistency of dirt at this point, all over the floor. And I was so embarrassed. And I remember the staff being so wonderful, and they were so kind, and they helped me shovel it off the ground. And, but I just remember being so embarrassed about that. Despite that embarrassment, the Tileworks was always a really magical place for me, and it still is. It was nice to get back there and see it. It hasn't really changed much in 20 years, so I hope it'll be there another 100 more years. If you get a chance, please check it out. It's definitely worth it. Of all the 3 places, this one holds the most magic for me. So thank you for coming along on this journey with me, and have a great day.